They laughed when he walked into the room. Laughed like they always did, like intelligence had a color. Jaden Clark was the son of the cleaning lady. Every morning at 6 a.m., while the city still rubbed sleep from its eyes, his mother, Lorraine, scrubbed floors at Halden Capital, billion-dollar investment firm that never bothered to learn her name. To them, she was just the help. A whisper in a hallway. A mop behind a door. Jaden grew up knowing exactly who he wasn't. He wasn't the kid who went to private school. He wasn't the son of the man whose name was carved in steel on the 80th floor. He wasn't even supposed to be in the building, let alone sitting in the glass-walled boardroom of Halden Capital. But here he was, and they had no idea what was about to hit them. 2 weeks earlier, Halden Capital had hit a wall. A $100 million hedge fund algorithm of pride of the company had failed. It wasn't just a miscalculation. It was hemorrhaging money by the minute, dragging down investor trust, and threatening legal disaster. The CTO resigned. The lead quant vanished into personal leave. And the CEO, Thomas Greer, a silver-haired titan of Wall Street, was reportedly considering options which, in corporate language, meant panic. Lorraine had overheard everything. Not by accident. She moved quietly. Yes, but she listened. And when she told Jaden what she'd heard, he didn't laugh. He took notes. Jaden was 23, a data science graduate from a third-tier state university with a GPA that no one ever asked about. No Ivy League prestige. No internships with tech titans. But what he had was time, hunger, and an obsession with algorithms that bordered on religious. He'd rebuilt their model in 48 hours, found a glitch in 12, designed a patch in 3, and now he was here, on the 80th floor, standing in front of a table full of white men in suits who had once walked past his mother like she was furniture. Who let the janitor's kid in? One executive scoffed. A few others chuckled, sipping imported coffee. Jaden smiled. I believe I've solved your $100 million problem, he said quietly. The room stilled. Greer raised an eyebrow. I'm sorry, who exactly are you? I'm Jaden Clark, Lorraine Clark's son. You might remember Hershey cleaned your office. More chuckles. This time, tighter. Greer stood. Son, this isn't a charity board. You can't just walk into a meeting and... I reverse-engineered your algorithm. Jaden cut in, voice calm but firm. Your quant team misaligned the covariance matrix with the volatility cluster in your risk model. It created a blind loop. Your system's been mistaking outliers for trends for over 6 months. He moved to the projector, clicked once. A spreadsheet blinked to life. Then a simulation. Then a new model. And silence. No one laughed now. The next 10 minutes were a blur of stunned murmurs, sharp breaths, and darting eyes. One by one, the executives leaned forward. The CTO's chair sat empty. Greer's jaw worked wordlessly. This can't be, one of them whispered. It explains the dip in the Hong Kong trades. Jaden clicked again. I restructured your parameters using a normalized volatility index. It corrects the loop. You'll stop losing money in, he checked his phone, about 90 seconds. A pause. Then ping. One of the traders' phones buzzed. Then another. A third looked up from a Bloomberg terminal. It's stabilizing, he said. The positions are holding. And still, Jaden stood there. Still the son of a black woman who wiped sweat off marble tiles, so these men could make millions. Greer slowly sat down. What do you want? He asked. Jaden didn't blink. I want you to listen. That was all. Not a job. Not a payout. Not even credit. He didn't want their titles. He wanted their respect. But respect was expensive. Greer's eyes narrowed. You could have sold this to our competitors. Why bring it to us? Jaden looked him in the eye. Because my mother raised me right. The silence stretched. Then someone clapped. One of the younger analysts, early 30s, red tie, eyes wide, started it. Then another joined. A third stood up. By the time the applause reached Greer, the CEO, sat frozen, watching, processing. Something was shifting in him, some fracture in the ivory wall of entitlement cracking, just slightly. Greer finally spoke. "You have a job here, starting today, head of risk modeling." Jaden tilted his head. "That's not enough." The room tensed. Greer raised a brow. "Excuse me." Jaden turned the projector off. "You want me to help you fix this company? I want a voice. Not a title. A seat. At every table where decisions are made. Not just because I'm right, but because people like me deserve to be there." He paused. "And I want a plaque with my mother's name. On the 80th floor." The room went deathly quiet. Then Greer stood and smiled. "Done." Outside, Lorraine waited in the lobby. The same as every day, holding her mop, standing beneath marble columns. When Jaden came down the elevator, he didn't say anything. Just walked up, kissed her on the forehead, and handed her an envelope. Inside was a promotion letter and a badge, one that read, Lorraine Clark, Facilities Director. Lorraine didn't know what to say. She held the badge in her hand like it might disappear if she blinked too hard. Her fingers trembled slightly, smudging the edge of the glossy print. "I don't understand," she said, eyes flicking between Jaden and the words, Facilities Director. "You don't have to," Jaden replied gently. "You just have to walk in tomorrow, lift your chin, and own it." "But Jay, I didn't ask for this." Jaden exhaled, shoulders tense. All my life you've asked for nothing. While they disrespected you, underpaid you, ignored you, it's time they saw who you really are." Tears threatened to spill, but Lorraine clenched her jaw. She hadn't cried in front of anyone since Jaden's father disappeared. Her tears weren't for public consumption. Upstairs, chaos reigned. Word had spread like wildfire across the trading floor. Jaden Clark, the janitor's son, was now head of risk modeling. The man who had, in minutes, done what 2 entire departments had failed to do in 6 months. Some whispered admiration. Others whispered fear. Because change was coming. And change was black. By the end of the week, Jaden had a corner office. That alone caused ripples. Not just because of his background, but because of how young, composed, and direct he was. He spoke plainly, never wasting a sentence. He didn't schmooze. He didn't golf. He didn't wear custom suits. He wore the same charcoal gray blazer and slim black tie every day. No Rolex. No air of superiority. Just results. And that scared people, especially Victor Langston, VP of Strategy. Victor had spent 22 years clawing his way up Halden's ladder. Ivy League graduate, boardroom favorite, the kind of man who could toast champagne with one hand and gut a rival with the other. And now, this kid was sitting closer to the CEO than he'd ever been. "Keep an eye on him," Victor told his assistant. "Find out everything. Who he talks to, what he reads, what he drinks. If he slips, if he breathes wrong, I want to know before he does." Because in Victor's mind, Jaden wasn't an opportunity. He was a threat. Jaden's first month was a storm. He rewrote 3 modeling frameworks, replaced an outdated data vendor, exposed 2 internal fraud risks, and quietly flagged an executive who had been falsifying expense reports for years. Greer didn't ask how Jaden found out. He just nodded and acted. The firm's numbers began climbing. Confidence returned. Investors noticed. But the biggest impact couldn't be charted in spreadsheets. It was on the faces of the interns. The ones with skin like Jaden's. The ones who had come in assuming they'd never be allowed near the decision-making tables. The ones who now stood taller when they walked past his office. He made a point to learn their names. "Demetrius, right? How's your pitch model coming?" "Samira, that presentation you gave clean. Smart visuals. Want to present it to the partners next week." And when an intern named Elena Latina, queer, overlooked tasked nervously if he'd review her capstone project, he stayed an hour after everyone else had left to help her. One night, she asked, "Why do you care? You're already in." Jaden smiled. "Because being the first means nothing if I make sure I'm the last." But not everyone welcomed his success. During an executive retreat in Connecticut, Victor made his move. Over dinner, wine flowed, laughter echoed across the garden, and the old guard huddled in quiet conversations. Jaden noticed the gaps. Who wasn't invited to speak? Whose jokes got ignored? Then came the ambush. "So, Jaden," Victor said casually, voice just loud enough to draw attention, "I hear you rewrote the entire exposure risk formula. Impressive. You mind sharing your math?" Jaden blinked. "It's in the system. I submitted a full audit report 2 weeks ago." Yes. Victor waved his hand dismissively. "But I mean, in your own words. Off the cuff. For the group." A few chuckled, clearly enjoying the show. A dozen eyes landed on Jaden. He sipped his water. "You want me to summarize a stochastic volatility risk model in real time while you sip Pinot?" Victor's grin tightened. "I mean, if you really did the work." Jaden leaned back. "Calm. Cool. Are you questioning the modally or the man?" Silence. Then Greer's voice, sharp as a blade. "Victor, that'll do." Victor laughed hollowly. "Just keeping the conversation lively, Tom." But his eyes didn't laugh. Neither did Jaden's. That night, Greer knocked on Jaden's hotel door. "Walk with me," he said. They strolled the edge of the lake, moonlight brushing the water. "I know you felt it," Greer said. "The weight, the looks, the condescension." Jaden nodded once. "It's nothing new." "No, but it's new here, and it scares them." Jaden stopped walking. "Then they should be scared." Greer turned. "And you? Are you afraid?" Jaden looked out at the dark water. "Yes," he said, "because one mistake, even a small one, will confirm every bias they've ever had." Greer exhaled. "We can't change who we are, but we can change the system brick by brick." Jaden shook his head. "You can. They'll always listen to you. I have to earn it every day." A beat passed. Then Greer said something unexpected. "My father was a janitor. In Pittsburgh. He died before I made it to college. I never talk about it. But when I see you, I remember." Jaden's eyes softened. "Then help me open the door wider. Don't just hold it for me." Greer nodded. "Let's build something they can't ignore." 2 months later, the test came. Halden was preparing to acquire a rival firm, Graybridge, holding a bold move that would expand their global reach. But Jaden, after reviewing internal records, found something chilling. Graybridge had been quietly investing in private prisons. And not just investing, profiting. Jaden brought it to Greer immediately. "They've funneled capital into detention centers in the South," he said, eyes flashing. "Some of those facilities have human rights violations. If we buy them, we buy the blood on their hands." Greer paled. This wasn't in the official records. Jaden slapped down a folder. "It's in the shell companies. I traced the trail." Greer rubbed his face. "If we back out, the board will revolt." Jaden leaned forward. "Then let them. You're either a company that stands for something or you're just another machine that eats money and spits out excuses." The next day, Greer canceled the acquisition. It made headlines. Stocks wobbled for a week, then soared. Investors respected the decision. The public praised the ethics. Internally, the board was split, but Greer stood behind it, and behind Jaden. Victor, however, was livid. He stormed into Jaden's office, slammed the door. "You're not a damn activist," he snapped. "You're an analyst. Stay in your lane." Jaden stood. "I'm my lane. It's just that my lane has purpose. Yours only has ego." Victor's face twisted. "You think you're changing the game? You're fad. A token. The flavor of the month." Jaden didn't flinch. "Then let's see who still has a seat at the table next month." Victor left, and 2 weeks later, he resigned. Internal leaks showed he'd falsified 3 separate reports to hide risk. Greer didn't blink. The old Halden would have buried it. The new Halden cleaned house. Lorraine visited the 80th floor for the first time that Friday. She stepped out of the elevator, heels clicking against polished tile. People turned, stared. Jaden met her by the wall. There, in brushed steel, was a plaque. Lorraine Clark. She cleaned the floors, then raised the man who changed the world above them. Lorraine touched the words and cried. Halden Capital was changing. The plaque wasn't just decoration. It was a symbol, a quiet revolution embedded in polished steel. Interns took photos with it. Employees from departments that had never spoken to Lorraine now paused to greet her with warmth, not pity. Security guards straightened their ties when she walked past. Even the snobby receptionist on the 80th floor now smiled, wide and genuine, offering coffee like Lorraine was the board chair. And in a way, she was. Not by title, but by legacy. Jaden's presence had shifted something deeper than policy. It had altered perception. Permanently. But in the shadows of progress, resentment festered. There were still those who believed he didn't belong. They just got quieter. For now. 2 weeks later, Jaden was invited to keynote the largest fintech summit on the East Coast. He almost said no. I'm not here to be a mascot, he told Greer. You're not, Greer replied. You're the architect of the new Halden. The world needs to hear from you. Not because you're black, but because you're right. So Jaden agreed. But he wasn't going to give the speech they expected. On stage, under the white-hot spotlight, Jaden stood in silence for 5 full seconds. 1,000 eyes stared. Phones recorded. Journalists waited, pens frozen. Then he said, They said I didn't belong in this building. I was told, more than once, that this suit looked borrowed. That my intelligence had to be proven daily, while others wore theirs like a second skin. Murmurs rippled. My mother used to mop the floor of the lobby you walk through to get here. Some of you stepped over her. Some of you still don't know her name. But that same woman raised me to believe that no one not a degree, not a dollar, not a skin tone defines your worth. Only your actions do. A pause. Jaden scanned the room and smiled. And if actions matter, then let me ask you, what have yours been saying lately? The applause began slowly, then swelled. Not everyone stood, but enough did. His words echoed for weeks. Back at Halden, Elena, the intern he mentored, had been offered a full-time role. So had Samira, and Demetrius had just been promoted to junior analyst. Jaden didn't take credit. He never did, but he made space. And that was everything. Then came the whistleblower report, an anonymous email sent to Jaden's private work inbox. The message was short. Check the merger documents from Q1. Greer isn't who you think he is. Start with the Cayman account. A friend. Jaden stared at the screen, blood chilling. For months, he'd stood shoulder to shoulder with Greer, believing in a shared mission. But now, he dove into files. What he found unraveled everything. Greer had hidden it well. A slush fund disguised as overseas consulting fees. Funneled through layers of shell companies in the Caymans, the money tied directly to lobbying efforts and worse. Private deals. Personal investments in sectors Halden had sworn to divest from. Detention centers. Environmental hazards. Pharmaceuticals with active lawsuits. All under Greer's name. Jaden sat back in his chair, heart thudding. It couldn't be real. Not him. Not the man who stood up to Victor, who approved the plaque, who said all the right things. But the documents didn't lie. And suddenly, Jaden understood. Greer hadn't changed the system. He had mastered it. That night, Jaden didn't sleep. He walked the city for hours. Through Harlem, through memories, through doubt. He saw his mother's face, proud and shining as she touched the plaque. What would this do to her? What would it do to everything they'd built? He considered staying quiet. He had power now, a future, influence. Maybe he could change things from the inside, gradually. Isn't that what everyone did? Isn't that what Greer had once told himself? At sunrise, Jaden had his answer. No, he wouldn't become the thing he had fought. He called a meeting. Not just any meeting, a meeting. Full executive board. Every senior partner. No assistants. No PR buffers. Just the truth. He presented the files in order. Every transfer. Every shell company. The connections. The lobbying trail. The unethical holdings. Silence drowned the room. Greer sat at the head of the table, unblinking. When Jaden finished, no one spoke for a full minute. Then Greer said quietly, "You don't know the game you're playing, son." Jaden looked at him evenly. "You think I don't? That's your mistake." Greer stood, adjusted his cufflinks. "Do you really believe the board will back you over me? I built this place." Jaden stepped closer, "And I rebuilt it. On truth." The board hired a woman named Naomi Kwan, who had watched the entire firm with the patience of a hawk spoke at last. "I'll call for a vote," she said. Greer smirked. "You'll regret this." Jaden met his gaze. "I already regret trusting you." One by one, hands rose. 9 votes. Greer was out. The fallout was swift. Headlines screamed. CEO of Halden Capital ousted in ethics scandal. Whistleblower reveals financial web tied to private prisons. Young black executive sparks financial reckoning. But inside Halden, the message was even louder. No one was untouchable anymore. Not even the boss. Jaden was offered the CEO position. He declined. "Give it to Naomi," he said. "She knows how to lead. And she listens." Instead, he formed a new internal body, the Ethics and Access Task Force, designed to investigate investments, audit leadership, and ensure every employee, regardless of race, gender, or background, had a path upward. Funded, permanent, transparent. He ran himself, and he made sure every intern knew its name. On a rainy Tuesday afternoon, Lorraine came to visit. She walked into Jaden's office unannounced, holding a paper bag. "Lunch," she said, as if nothing had changed. Jaden chuckled. "You know I have an assistant now, right?" She sat down, unpacking the bag. "Fried catfish, collard greens, mac and cheese. Don't mean you can't eat real food." He leaned back, looking at her. "Ma, did I do the right thing?" She paused, chewing slowly. Then, right isn't always clean, but it's still right. Jaden exhaled. "They're going to come for me eventually. The old guard, the money men, the ones who liked how quiet it was before." Lorraine wiped her mouth. "Then let them. But when they do, don't forget where you came from. And don't forget who you are." Jaden nodded. "I won't." And he didn't. Because the son of the black helper hadn't just solved a $100 million problem. He'd solved something far deeper. A belief that worth could be seen, measured, labeled by privilege. He shattered it, and in its place, built something new, something bold, something that wore his mother's name in steel. Months passed, then seasons, and still, the plaque remained on the 80th floor. Untouched, unpolished, sacred. Lorraine had become something of a legend in the building. Not because she asked to be, but because people needed her story. Interns whispered it like a prayer before big presentations. Executives nodded respectfully when she passed. And whenever someone asked how Halden changed, her name always came first. But Jaden? Jaden was evolving. He no longer needed to prove he belonged in the room. Now, he was redesigning the room. The Ethics and Access Task Force had grown into a movement within the financial world. Inspired by Jaden's bold, incorruptible leadership, firms across the country were forming similar bodies. Some out of guilt, some out of fear, but others out of genuine desire to do better. He gave talks, not keynotes, conversations, small, closed-door sessions with people and power people who looked like Greer, who were Greer until they listened. Not because they had to, but because it became undeniable. You couldn't argue with results. And Jaden delivered. Halden became the first major investment firm to publish a full transparency audit every quarter one that included not only financials, but hiring diversity, pay equity, internship acceptance breakdowns, and vendor ethics reviews. They divested from unethical holdings, reinvested in underserved communities, created scholarships for first-generation finance students, and opened satellite offices in Detroit, Jackson, and Birmingham, where people like Jaden were waiting, hungry, ready. But not everything came easy. There were whispers, always, that Jaden was a performative face, that he got lucky, that he had connections, that he had help. Some couldn't let go of their disbelief that someone like him, black, young, calm, and unapologetically sharp, could rise so far on merit alone. A reporter even asked him once, smugly, during a live panel, "Do you ever worry that you're being used as a symbol more than a strategist?" Jaden smiled. "No, I worry you still need symbols to accept reality." And the audience erupted, because truth cuts sharper than cynicism. One rainy morning, Jaden stood again in front of the plaque. Alone, he ran his fingers along his mother's name. It had become a ritual, a reminder, not of how far he'd come, but of how far she had carried him. The mop, the pain, the silence. The days she ate half so he could eat full. The nights she stood, feet bleeding, waiting for a late bus. He whispered, "We're still climbing, Ma." Behind him, a voice broke the stillness. "She'd be proud." Jaden turned. Naomi Kwan stood there, now chairwoman of Halden, sharp as ever in gray. "She is," he replied quietly. Naomi stepped beside him. "You've built something impossible." "I haven't built anything yet," he said. "I've just cleared the path." She turned to face him. "Jaden, there's talk of taking this public." Jaden frowned. "What do you mean?" "Halden, we've regained trust. Broken ground. There are investors, big ones, interested in building a new financial paradigm. Transparent, ethical, socially accountable, but needs a face." Jaden knew what she meant before she said it. "You want me to lead it?" "No," Naomi said, voice soft. "I want you to become it." A pause. Then, not a firm, a foundation, global, autonomous, powered by the best minds, but rooted in the communities this industry has ignored for decades. Education, opportunity, reinvestment, and you guiding it. Jaden was quiet for a long time. Then he asked the one question that mattered. "Will we still scare the people who deserve to be scared?" Naomi smiled. "Oh, yes." The Clark Foundation for Equitable Finance launched 6 months later. The ceremony was held on the 80th floor. Press lined the walls. Screens displayed live footage of schools, small business owners, grant recipients, all faces of color, all brimming with gratitude and disbelief. Lorraine stood beside her son, dressed in white. She said nothing during the ceremony, but when asked to speak at the end, she stepped forward, eyes bright, voice shaking. "My son didn't just fix a problem," she said. "He fixed what you were willing to ignore. And now, you don't get to look away anymore." They gave her a standing ovation. Jaden, meanwhile, stayed still, because this was never about applause. It was about permanence. 10 years later, a new intern walked into the same elevator Lorraine once used to ride at 6 a.m. with her mop cart. He was young, nervous, black, dressed in a too-big suit, a little overwhelmed. The older receptionist saw him, smiled. "You heading to the Clark floor?" He nodded quickly. "Well," she said, pointing up, "that's where the future lives." And as the elevator doors closed, behind him on the wall, a quote engraved in glass read, "When you're told you don't belong in the room, build one that no one can lock." Jaden Clark. The boy smiled and pressed the button. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.